welcome everybody to this evening's event, which is all about succeeding in GCSE languages for your student who's doing a GCSE with us here at Kingsdale. The outline of the event is what you can see on the screen, hopefully in front of you now. I'm going to start off with welcoming you all, like I just have, and introducing you to myself. I'm Mr. Watson, the Acting Head of Languages. And I also have with me, although you can't see them, the Director of Languages, Ms. Evans, and the Second in Charge of Languages, Ms. Bira. They will be helping me out by answering any questions that you may have during the meeting today. You can post questions throughout the session through the Q&A function on Teams here. Secondly, we're going to have a look at some language learning in context. Then we're going to have a look at how the Languages Department is supporting your child. Finally, how your child can support themselves, and then how you as a parent can support your child with their GCSE languages. Bearing in mind that obviously some of you may not be linguists yourself and may struggle to know how to support your child. Now, did you know when asked by GH magazine, 50% of parents said they wish they had learned a foreign language at school. So what we want is for your child not to be that parent in the future. We want them to be able to say that they did learn a language at school. And we hope that this event is helpful for you in terms of making sure that your child can achieve the best possible grade in their GCSE language with us. So just a little bit about language learning in context. You'll see on the screen in front of you quite a few headlines from various news outlets about Britain's inability to speak languages. And about how foreign language learning in general has been in decline in this country for quite a while. This is why at Kingsdale we really believe in language learning and getting all of our students at GCSE to do a language. Virtually all of our students do a language at GCSE, around 90%. And that's because we believe that we're giving them the opportunity we're setting them up with skills for life that will open many doors and opportunities for them. You can see here, this is some research that says that on average across the European Union, 65% of people can speak at least one other language. That figure in the UK is 65% of people cannot speak a foreign language. So again, your child gaining this qualification in a language GCSE will set them aside from many youngsters their age when they finish their GCSEs. You'll also see here that the UK is right near the bottom of the foreign language learning within the EU in terms of students who learn 2 or more foreign languages. Right down there at the bottom. I know we're no longer in the EU, but this is some data I think that just sort of sets it into context for us, sort of how beneficial it is for students to have and what a commodity it is for them as well, something that they can use to sell themselves moving forward into the future. We know the benefits of language learning. This is what we try to sell to students through our language lessons and also through the cultural events that we put on. There's many benefits of speaking languages, as we know. A third of businesses want people specifically for their language skills, and many students may be pleased to hear that multilingual employees can earn more as well in the future. And also there's lots of occupations in which speaking languages is beneficial, and they're not just teaching and translation. Engineers, doctors, computer games designers, all of these things are jobs that require language skills. There are many mental benefits of learning languages as well, and in addition to that, obviously, it gives you the opportunity to move abroad, live abroad, and work abroad as well. And obviously, it's the cultural element in addition to that of becoming more culturally sensitive and aware to people of different backgrounds and different cultures as well. Now, it isn't all bad news because, as I mentioned previously, at Kingsdale, we're bucking the trend that we see nationally. At GCSE, around 46% of students in the UK are entered for a language GCSE. And at Kingsdale, we're bucking this trend, entering around, last year, approximately 90% of our students in year 11. You can see on the right-hand side, we actually received in 2019 a letter from the former Minister for State Schools, Nick Gibb, about our language entries. That was when we had 85% of pupils entering for a language GCSE. And he commented on the fact that this is setting up students very well for the future, and as he says as well, broadening their horizons and enabling them to embark on further study. We have an increased uptake also at A-level at Kingsdale. We now offer all of our languages in the sixth form as well. So it's not all bad news, and we're doing as best as we can to buck this sort of national trend of declining language learning, and also to sort of make sure our students come out, as I said before, with qualifications that perhaps peers their age elsewhere don't have. So what are we doing as a department to help your child? Well, I have some things that I'm sure many of you already know, but it's just worth highlighting as well. We're a team of 19 enthusiastic language specialists, and we have many native speakers as part of our team. All of us have learnt foreign languages, obviously, and all of us benefited from the experiences that brings. And I think we're all very enthusiastic about sharing that with the students in terms of trying to engage and inspire them to learn another language. Now, it's obviously been a little bit difficult with COVID recently, but prior to this, we've run many trips abroad to Austria, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. All of these countries, it's all about trying to give students as many opportunities as we can to put what they're learning into practice. And we're hoping this is something that we can revive soon, sort of as we sort of manage with the pandemic. We make use of online tools such as Memrise, Quizlet and Seneca to track student progress and make language learning more engaging, particularly when it comes to homework. You know, it's not all copying things or translating things at home on pieces of paper. There's lots of online and engaging ways of learning languages that we try to harness for students when they're doing homework. We offered native speaker clubs for students who speak French, German or Spanish at home. So we try to encourage those native speakers not to join the French, German and Spanish classes in school, but actually to join these native speaker clubs so that they can do their own language GCSE early and then do another language as part of their curriculum. In addition, we also enter students for a GCSE and or A-level in their home language if there is that on offer. And that's so that they have that extra qualification. Even though we don't provide any tuition in these languages, such as sort of Russian and Portuguese, we make sure that students, if they do speak these languages, are able to, as I say, get the qualification so that they can use it on their CV in the future. We celebrate linguistic diversity each year on European Day of Languages. We've recently just had this on the 26th of September, and we had a whole week's worth of activities related to this during tutor time and during language lessons. We have a wide range of intervention available for all languages. So at GCSE, there are many intervention sessions or revision sessions that happen before and after school. And if you would like more information about that, then you can get in contact about the specific sessions we have on offer. You can look on the website in the languages section, or you can send us an email. I'll put the email address up for languages at the end of the session. We are also using government funding to provide some students with extra tuition through the National Tutoring Programme. This is all through the government scheme to help students who feel like they've missed out during the pandemic with lost learning. Again, if you would like further information on whether your child would be eligible for this, because there are some restrictions on who can access this sort of tutoring, then do get in contact with us. And as I said again, we will be putting the email address up at the end of the session. We now have a work experience link with a local translation company. So Year 11 and Year 13 students are able to do some work experience at a local translation company. It's a trans creation company actually that looks at famous sort of advertisements, and we had some sixth formers join the company for a week's translation experience in July this year, and they had an excellent time. And again, it's just about giving students the opportunity to see what careers in languages may be like for them. And finally, as I've mentioned before, all 4 of our languages are offered at A-level. So seeing as we're trying our best to inspire them at GCSE, we want them to know that the provision is there for them beyond GCSE at A-level with us here at Kingsdale as well. So how can students help themselves with their language learning? I have 10 tips here for them as well. This, just as I didn't mention before, this presentation is being recorded, and a link will be shared with you following this event to come back to this. But feel free, obviously, to screenshot the slide as we go. Obviously, having a positive attitude towards language studies, coming prepared to each lesson, participating fully in class, and obviously using the opportunity to speak as much in the target language as possible. We're aware that students don't get the opportunity sometimes at home to speak in the target language if there's nobody there to practice with them. So obviously taking advantage of this is really beneficial. We encourage students, if they're using social media or just their phone or anything that they have, like an electronic device, into the foreign language that they're learning, and they may want to follow some Instagram, YouTube or TikTok accounts that will help them with their language learning. We often find students with technology, they know which buttons to press, they know where everything is, and so actually they can, if they have it in the foreign language already, then they'll know, they'll still know how to use the phone, but it will help them learn some vocabulary they might not have seen before. We say test yourself regularly on vocabulary and ask someone at home to help you. That's where you parents come in, hopefully using some flashcards or something like that. Make the most of the online resources that I've mentioned previously, so such as Memrise, and remembering that little and often works best. We would say as linguists that doing 5 to 10 minutes a day is much more beneficial than doing vocabulary revision sort of all in one go in half an hour, for example. Use past paper questions that can be accessed via Revision World, which is an online website, and also the Edexcel website. We use Edexcel at GCSE for French, German and Spanish. And there's lots of materials on there, including sample assessments and vocabulary lists on there for students to access as well. I would encourage students to try and do some free writing at home and give time themselves writing without any resources to see how much they can do, and then hand in to the teacher to get feedback. I think sometimes what happens is students, they learn individual bits of vocabulary, but what they don't always do when they're at home is try to put it all together. So what I encourage my students to do is sit down and do some free writing, give themselves a topic, something they've been learning about in class, and see what they can write down in a set period of time. And they'll see that if they do this regularly, that they'll be able to write more and more each time as well. Find something to watch in another language and change the language on your Netflix Prime or Disney Plus account. This is something that works very well. I had a student who was struggling a little bit in Spanish, who managed to watch the whole of, well, I think at least 2 seasons of Friends in Spanish ultimately, dubbed obviously, and ended up finding the listening element of it much easier in the end. Because they'd had that practice. And obviously as well, for the students, it doesn't always feel like learning. It's just something that they're doing passively, watching something, but watching it in the foreign language with some English subtitles to start with, and then maybe into using then the foreign language subtitles as well. If they can get into a regular routine of that, that would be great. Listening to foreign music, radio and news, obviously as well. There's lots of this available, and again, if your child is unsure where they can access this, then they should speak to their languages teachers about this, because we have lots of resources on this and ideas of where they can access websites and things to listen to foreign radio and news. And finally, as we mentioned before, using the apps and websites to learn the language independently. On this, there's obviously, aside from the ones that I've already mentioned, very famous ones such as Duolingo, for example, you can use as well as language learning apps that students can do in addition to what they've been asked to do. There's many of them about, and different ones suit different students. I might also just take the opportunity to recommend the Duolingo podcast, which is available in French and Spanish. This podcast is just short stories in French and Spanish that are for intermediate sort of learners, where they get extra listening practice. They're sort of 10 to 15 minutes long. And they're a mix of Spanish and English, or French and English as well. So students don't spend the whole time just listening to the foreign language. It helps them to sort of summarize what the English part helps to summarize what they've just heard in Spanish or French for example, and also the stories that they tell are very interesting, I think, as well. Now, most importantly, is how you can help your child, which I think is why you've all joined us this evening. The first one, which I always say, is be positive about language learning and avoid sharing horror stories of your own experiences. I've had many a parents' evening where parents tell me about how horrendous their French speaking GCSE exam was, or something like that, sort of in front of their child, and I'm thinking, no, please don't say that. So trying to keep a positive outlook on it, which I'm sure you will do, but just bearing in mind that they are a little bit, obviously they're impressionable, so, you know. Taking an interest in what your child is learning and helping them work out how language learning will benefit them. So asking them each week, what are you learning? Can you tell me some words that you've learned, etc., etc. Ask your child to teach you a bit of the language each week. I think this would be really nice, particularly if you are one of those parents who wish they'd learned a language at school. This could be your opportunity to learn along with them. And we often find as well, if students are confident enough to teach you something, or they can explain something to you, then it's obviously a good sign that they themselves have understood it in the first place. Test your child using their vocabulary booklet. So we have vocabulary booklets per half term for the students at GCSE. Ask them if you can see it, and ask them if you can help them revise from it. We do regular vocab tests either online each week or in the class. And if you are able to help set aside a time to help them revise that, that would be really useful. Look through their book with them, their languages book, and encourage them to check their work for errors and redraft written pieces. This is really helpful for us. And again, the sixth point is the same in terms of helping them look through their notes. What we find is often students complete work, we mark their work, and then we ask them to do sort of feedback again on the work, but sometimes students don't always redraft the work they've done. And so it's the idea of trying to get them to go back to a piece of work and to have another go. And also to try and get them to note down anything that they're still struggling with to let their teacher know. And as I said before, you know, if they can't explain something to you at home, then it's probably a sign that they need to revise it. And having that communication with you and them, and then that they can pass on to their teacher, I think is sort of would be really helpful. Encourage them to prepare a bank of phrases which can be used on a variety of topics. So when they have taught you something, a phrase that they've learned, for example, in the future tense, maybe say to them, okay, can you know, what topics have you learned? And they might say, I've learned to talk about my school and I've learned to talk about my holidays, and think about a way that maybe they could use that future tense phrase that they've taught you in both of those contexts. So just trying to get them to build a bank of phrases that they know very well, that they've revised a lot, and that, you know, are transferable between the topics that they're learning at GCSE. And again, if you'd like a list of topics that they study at GCSE, you can find this either on the EdXL website or on the Kingsdale website in the languages section. You can find them through our curriculum maps that we have on the website there. Encourage students to use word reference, which is an online dictionary, to look up individual words instead of relying on Google Translate. We teachers, we do know when students have used Google Translate, it is pretty obvious, and also it's not particularly helpful for them. So trying to get them to use online dictionaries, word reference is a good example, but there are many others as well, just to look up individual words when doing homework rather than relying solely on translators, which often are incorrect, and then, you know, may teach them things that then they get confused by and use again and again incorrectly. Track your child's progress via Go for Schools. So there won't be any data on Go for Schools for languages until the end of this term in December, but when there is, keep an eye on it. Let us know if there are if you have any concerns about how they're getting on. And again, encourage them to revise for the end of unit assessments and things that we have going on. We always put revision materials and give students plenty of warning about assessments on Show My Homework and on Teams. So again, getting them to make sure that they're prepared well for those assessments. It would be really useful if you could help us with that as well, support us with that. And finally, my favourite one, your child will never have no languages homework. If they say to you they've got no languages homework, then you can always say to them that actually, even if for some reason, in the very unlikely event that they don't have any language homework, there's always something to do via Memorise or Quizlet. They can always carry on learning vocabulary through their vocabulary booklets. There's lots of stuff that they can do like the free writing task that I mentioned earlier as well. Just encouraging them, like I say, to get into a routine of little and often, 2 to 3 times a week, rather than one sort of half an hour or hour session, just to keep, and ideally as well on a day where they don't have a language lesson, just to try and keep the language ticking over in their mind. Why does this all matter, and why have we set up this session with you? Well, according to the Harvard Family Research Project, parental engagement is associated with all of the following that you see on the screen: high student achievement, and we sort of believe that, you know, we work as a team, us, you, and your child as well, and the three of us in that triangle will sort of be able to, when we're working together, we'll be able to get students to the best possible grade. And also, I might mention as well that really trying to help your child understand why a language will benefit them will provide them with the motivation to carry out the task they need to do. So having a conversation with them about, you know, what would you like to do in the future, or what sort of plans do you have, or what would you like to achieve, and then trying to tie in with them, so how would the language help you with that, and maybe trying to sort of help steer them in that direction like we do at school, as to sort of how, because when students, I think, really realise how it's going to benefit them, then that's when they sort of really come into their own, and are motivated, obviously, to succeed the best that they can do. And that's it. I've tried to keep it nice and short, just because I'm aware it's the sort of thing where I'm talking a lot at you. But I know it's a lot of information to take in, and as I say, we will be sending out a recording of this session to you if you'd like to access any of it again. But as I say as well, if you do have any questions, feel free to place them in the Q&A for us. My colleagues are still there for you as well, if you do have any questions. And also feel free to contact us anytime on the email address that you see on the screen, which is languages@kingsdale.southwark.sch.uk. We are more than happy to help at any time with any language query that you have. And I think that's it from me. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. As I say, we'll stay online to carry on with, if there's any extra questions in the Q&A. But if not, wishing you a very good evening a good evening, and speak to many of you again soon. Take care. Thank you.